Hello everyone, welcome to Security 542 Web Application Penetration Testing and Ethical Hacking. My name is Eric Conrad. So I'm very excited to show you this version of the class. It's the biggest lab update in course history. We revamped a lot of the labs, lots of new labs. We completely revamped the VM. We revamped the entire Capture the Flag. And we added a new tool, Burp Suite Pro. Now, the class has had Burp Suite for quite a while, the community version. We've been talking to the fine people from Portswigger for a few years now to try to integrate a trial license, a 4-month trial license of Burp Suite Pro into this class. And the reason we wanted 4 months is you get access to on-demand for 4 months, and we can't give you a tool that expires 1 month before your course expires. So we went back and forth, and they finally agreed, which is excellent. You get Burp Suite Pro, so a massive update to the course. Let's go over some of the pen testing courses you'll see. Here's an overview of many of the penetration testing courses. Of course, you're here for 542. The sequel to this class is 642. They go deeper on things like MongoDB and NoSQL and many more advanced things, but you're here for 542, so let's talk about that. So here is our day one summary. Now, you may hear me say day one or section one. I'll kind of flip back and forth. The reason we call it day one, and it's hard for me not to say day one, is this class is normally taught in a 6-day format. And book one is day one, book two is day two. Now, you're not taking it in a 6-day format. You're taking it on demand over the course of days or weeks or months, right? So if you hear me say day one, day two, day three, I'm referring to book one, book two, book three, okay? And even some of the slides that you'll see coming up have day one, day two, day three. That's that distinction here. So we'll talk about why you're here. Why are you here? Now, maybe you're a full-time penetration tester. Maybe you're an internal pen tester. By internal, I mean you pen test for your company as an employee. Maybe you hire pen testers. You want to see if you're getting good value out of that. Maybe you're trying to defend against pen testers. And all those audiences, if you're any one of those folks, you'll have a good time and learn a lot. Now, this class is about breaking stuff. By breaking stuff, I mean breaking into things. It's about breaking, not fixing. So we won't spend a lot of time on defending stuff, how to reconfigure your systems to better harden them. We'll talk a little bit about that, but mostly it's about breaking into systems, and I am unapologetic about that. And this class has more labs than most any SANS class I'm aware of. Section one here, day one, has 7 labs. Day two has 7 labs, on through the week. The Capture the Flag is entirely lab. Now, the Capture the Flag is normally played in a 6-hour format on day 6, live. You can play it over days or weeks if you want. But lots and lots of hands-on. I find hands-on helps cement those skills, right? So a kickoff day one on why are you here, the background of the web, the history of the web. We're not covering the history just to, walk down memory lane. We're covering the history because the history is critical for understanding where we are today. The web wasn't built really with any security in mind at all back in 1989 when it was first released. And we've added a series of kind of ad hoc changes to it over the years, but its underpinnings, there's no real security. It's all been added later. Security. We'll talk about who is in DNS. We'll have our first lab on DNS harvesting. We'll go through virtual host discovery. We'll dig into the guts of HTTP and how it works from 0.9 straight to HTTP 2.0 and even quick QUIC, which is HTTP 2, essentially over UDP. We'll look at one of the key tools you have now, interception proxies, tools like Burp Suite Pro and Zap. We'll install Burp Suite Pro, and we'll proxy SSL via Burp and Zap by importing certificates. Just pro tip, if you end up reinstalling the VM or reverting something like that, remember to repeat those 2 labs. You can repeat them all you want, not a big deal. They're both very quick labs, but you need to redo those if you want to start over fresh in a new VM. And we'll test and exploit Heartbleed, and we'll go over a bonus snake challenge. So the course is kind of laid out here, at least the course roadmap. And today we'll talk about introduction and information gathering. Day 2 is configuration, identity, and authorization testing. Day 3 is on injection, HTML injection, SQL injection, things like that. Day 4 is XML external entities and cross-site scripting. Then on day 5, we'll talk about cross-site request forgery, logic flaws, and advanced tools. And finally, the Capture the Flag challenge. All right, folks, I'm very excited to talk to you, and we'll start up next on section 1. So why are you here? You're a pen tester, either professionally or as a third party, I should say, or an internal pen tester, meaning you work for your company, or you want to understand the technology better, you want to secure your web apps better, you want to defend better, or you want to understand the business of pen testing better, like you're hiring pen testers. Are you getting value from that? You may not be getting much value from that. There's, speaking of John Strand, he calls these places pen test puppy mills. People throwing up shingles and hiring kids out of college, giving them tools, the kids press buttons, you get a pen test. How valuable is that? You may be getting very limited value for your pen test. And I'll go through all that. I know where all the bodies are buried in this industry. I've been doing this for a long time. My first pen test was before the term pen testing was invented. That's how old I am, okay? Like 1995 was my first pen. I went to Wall Street, did a pen test, lit it up, shock and awe campaign, and I got bit by that bug pretty hard, right? So my career going back, 1991, Unix sysadmin. 1993, we got hacked. And that was the best thing that happened to my career, getting hacked. Not for my company, but for my career. I'm like, ooh, this is what I want to do. So in I'll give myself credit for 2 moments of clarity in my career. 91, I happened to work for .com just kind of randomly. I saw the internet for the first time in 91. I said, that's my career. I just knew it. And then in 93, we got hacked. I said, oh, those two things together. Yeah, that's it. My friends said I'd lost my mind. They thought I'd lost completely, because security was not a career. There were no titles. There was no money. My goal out of college was to make 40 grand a year. That's how low my expectations were. If I could have a car, my own apartment, I'd made it. And my first Unix sysadmin job, 21 grand a year. Now, 1991 dollars, but still, that's not a lot of money, no matter how you slice it. It's just not a lot of money, right? So no one did this for the money back then. Now, people do it for the money now. Oh, yeah, there's a gold rush now, right? People are rushing in, right? I'm getting calls from former coworkers, a CSO from 10 years ago. Hey, Eric, my son's in college. He wants to do security now. This is a constant now. This didn't happen 25 years ago. No one was here because there was no titles. And we did it back then for the passion, because we thought it was useful and necessary and interesting and intriguing, right? So I got hacked in 93, so I started defending against hacks. And then I thought, well, how are they launching these things? How are these like evil hackers like bending time and space and altering system and backdooring my system, installing rootkits? How's all this stuff happening? Large Japanese multinational company whose name you know, their main R&D lab was in Cambridge, Mass, Kendall Square, Mass. I lived in East Cambridge. I walked to work. It was great, 93. And we got hacked. And they installed a backdoor, and it was logging all the passwords when you logged in. If you telnetted out, dating the story, it would log all those passwords too. Username, password, IP. Username, password, IP. I found a file called passwords.txt in dev number 0. It was dev the number 0 / passwords.txt. I found that file. I'm like, what is a text file doing in my device directory? That makes no sense. And it was username, password, IP for accounts logging in, for accounts telnetting out, which is the old way we logged in the systems interactively. I'm like, how are they doing all this stuff? And I wanted to know, and I want to do that stuff. I want to be like a white hat and do that stuff for pay. So in 95, I did. So long view on this stuff. And so a long view on the pen test, pen testing industry, right? And a lot of fairly ugly practices happening. We'll talk about that. So you're conducting pen tests, you're defending against pen tests, you want to get better value out of the pen tests you're hiring, you're in the right class, okay? We'll tell you all that stuff, right? Michael Zalewski is one of the smartest people I know. I don't know him, but I've read his books, 2 of his books, Silence on the Wire and this one. Silence on the Wire and The Tangled Web are easily top 10 InfoSec books all time. He's got 2 of them, right? And he works for Google. He wrote P0F, Passive OS Fingerprinting. He wrote American Fuzzy Lop, a fuzzer. And I like this point on the web. And the point he's making is we made this mess that is non-securable. The web cannot be secured. Because historically, we had this classic division. You had the application Oracle. There was an application, there was data, and there was clear line of demarcation between the application and the data. Oracle was the application. The database table is the data. And the web, it's all intermingled blobs. Data is the application, application is the data, it's all intermixed. So there's no clear delineation between the application and the data, they're all jammed together. We have no method for securing this. There's like 50 plus years of computer science theory presuming the application and the data are 2 distinct things. They're not. So we have blobs now, right? Traditional model, there were very clear boundaries between the high-level data objects, the documents, and the application itself. There was a clear distinction, right? And now the browser world, we've got these intermingled blobs of text and code, et cetera, et cetera. There's no real method for securing this. It's arguably non-securable. And yet it's the engine that drives the whole internet, right? Your cell phone is mostly web apps. The web is obviously full of web. So the vast majority of humans interact with the internet via the web, whether via a cell phone or a tablet or their computer. It's the web, right? If you take the web away, most people would think the internet's now gone. We know that's not true, but for most users, that is true, right? And here's the thing about web app pen testing. Web app pen test, the success of a web app pen test is correlated 100% to the skill and experience of the pen tester. Other forms of pen testing, this is less true. I can do a server-side test using like Immunity Canvas or Core Impact or something like that, and Core Impact for a service side, meaning I'm initiating the attack to a listening service like SMB. I crank up Eternal Blue or Bluekeep RDP. I crank up Bluekeep. Tenable really annoyed Microsoft by releasing the Bluekeep exploit, right? So Bluekeep, if you have RDP running on Windows 7 or 2018 R2, stop now. Do not have RDP, unpatched. RDP running on Windows 7 or 2008 R2, the exploit's now in the wild, right? So that's bad news bears. And so with something like Bluekeep or Eternal Blue from the NSA Hacking Toolkit, which is against SMB, Eternal Blue caused over, NotPetya caused over $10 billion in damages, billion with a B. If you want to read a rocking story about NotPetya, I'm sure many of you have seen the Wired magazine article. It is epic. The point I'm making here is the skill required to launch something like Eternal Blue, my 10-year-old daughter could successfully infect you. So this is an amazing story. So you've probably seen their shipping containers around the world. They got hit with NotPetya, and I think it took 17 seconds to move across their global WAN. 17 seconds, right? Someone said that. Let's 45 seconds, a large Ukrainian bank. 16 seconds, ISSP. So it would spread globally in under a minute, right? Under a minute and destroy everything it touched. And so Maersk, $10 billion in damages, by the way, for one strain of malware, right? And this story is amazing. So they were crippled. They didn't have a working backup. It was gone, right? So their entire global AD infrastructure for these shipping containers, right? They've got hundreds of thousands of shipping containers, probably millions, well, hundreds of thousands anyways. Thousands of ships, right? Ports around the world. The entire AD infrastructure is gone in under 60 seconds, literally gone, right? And the only reason they survived that part was there was a power outage in Ghana, and there was one backup controller was offline due to a power outage in Ghana. And so they called Ghana, and they said, unplug it before the power comes back on, because once power comes back on, that's gone too, right? Pull a disk out of that thing and fly to London, where the team was trying to perform the recovery from this incident. Person in Ghana didn't have the right visa to get to London. They flew to Nigeria, met in the middle. Like two people flew to a separate country, Nigeria, handed off the disk, flew back to London, recovered their global AD infrastructure from that set of disks that was offline. Crazy, crazy. The skill required to do all that stuff is very limited. The malware was automated, right? So as a pen tester, to launch that same exploit, you can have zero knowledge. I could train a 10-year-old to do it, right? Literally. But web app pen testing is different. It's not like that. Web app pen testing, you have to have skill. The tools only get you so far. Burp is absolutely amazing if you have to drive that bus. It takes a lot of skill to drive that bus. So what this means is you may have been hiring pen testers for years now. And the pen testers themselves may be quite mediocre, but you don't know that. Because the reports they're giving are pretty good. Because Core Impact, if you want to find like Eternal Blue, that's all automatable, easy. You can know nothing and find that, right? But to find a flaw in a web app, you've got to have skill unless it's a really obvious flaw. Like there's a learning curve on Burp. You're going to climb that curve this week for sure, but there's a learning curve, right? And it gives you the ability to find flaws, but it's really up to your skills and your experience to really get it, right? I have pen tests all the time and the perverse thing in the industry, companies like mediocre pen tests. They do. They love them. Why? Because now they're compliant. They're compliant. Passing a pen test, like, high fives all around. It's Miller time, right? We passed. We're compliant. So compliance-driven security drives this mad end state of people wanting mediocre pen tests because now they passed, right? You don't want to pass the pen test. You want to fail the pen. That's the whole point. You should be desperately hoping to fail that pen test. A pen test that finds nothing means nothing. Passing a pen test means nothing. Why did you pass that pen test? You limited the scope, right? Client of mine. Yeah, Eric, so here's what I want to do. I want to do web app pen testing. I want to do client-side attacks. I want to do server-side attacks. Yeah, no client-side, no email. What do you mean no email? Yeah, we don't want to frighten our users. Well, they should be frightened. It's a scary world. It's a big, bad, scary internet, right? They should be afraid. I'm afraid. You should be afraid. We don't want to frighten them. And so the beautiful thing about running my own company, I walk away. If they limit the scope, clients will limit the scope so much in a game to pass the pen test. Well, for PCI, that's out of scope. No, that's in scope. No, that's out of scope. All that horrible legacy stuff, out of scope. It magically goes away, right? And now it's like, come on, right? And so when I have clients tell me we don't want any client side, we don't want any email, I say hire someone else and I walk away. That's the beauty of running my own company. I can do that. Because if I see that they want some compliance pen test where the scope is so narrow that they know they're going to pass, what's the point of that? But now they're PCI compliant or whatever, right? So I'm not anti-compliance, but being PCI compliant is payment card industry, by the way. You're obviously better being PCI compliant than not PCI compliant. But if you stop at the letter of the law, you're going to get owned. Every major credit card breach we've seen, all of them, the companies passed their most recent PCI audit. They had to. So Target, PCI compliant, right? All of them. Home Depot, on and on and on and on. Equifax, all these companies passed their last PCI audit, which proves quantitatively that compliance is not security. It's a subset of security. If you're compliant and you stop at the letter of the law, you're insecure. I'm not anti-compliance, you have to go further. Compliance is one of the legs of the stool building your InfoSec program. Not the only leg, one of the legs, right? And so you're hiring mediocre pen testers, you don't know it, because you're passing the pen tests. And again, I could be a pretty good pen tester service side for things like Eternal Blue, having very little skill. I can't do it here. You've got to have skills here, right? And by the way, if you think of becoming a pen tester, when they interview you, the person hiring you is a young pen tester, potential pen tester. Usually the thing they're most interested in knowing is how much travel will you stomach? 80% travel? 90% travel? That's the metric they're mostly looking for. And if you get hired by one of these companies, get that number in writing. Get it in writing, right? So usually they want to know how much travel you stomach. They don't want to hire people like me. They can't afford me. I have these pesky things called children and a mortgage and a wife, and I don't want to be on the road 80%. I won't be on the road 80%. They don't want me. They want a kid who's 23 years old who will do 80% travel. Now, I'm painting with the broad brush here, obviously, but this is true for many companies in the industry, right? So they hire kids, they give them some tools, they hand off mediocre pen tests that look pretty good. Clients are happy because they're compliant, right? That's what's happening. Now, again, Big Four accounting firms do a reliably good job. Companies like Black Hills InfoSec, John Strand's company, and Rendition InfoSec by Jake Williams, they do a great job. There are good companies out there, and I'm biased because these are my friends, but you have to be good to be a pen tester here in this world, web app pen testing.